days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. A tough game for the San Francisco 49ers. They lost a football game, but they lost much more. They lost Fred Warner, the defensive captain, the team captain of this football team. And this is a really big blow. You know, you lose Nick Bosa. You're trying to overcome that. You're winning big games. You just came off the huge high of the divisional win against the Los Angeles Rams. And you're thinking to yourself, hey, if John Lynch can make a trade, this 49ers team is still in the mix. And they're playing a really good Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, but they have an opportunity to win, even with their backup quarterback, even with everything going on. And then in the first quarter, Fred Warner goes down, and Kyle Shanahan has now confirmed it was a dislocated ankle. Also, there was a fracture, which means with that, the timeline becomes a full season out. You know, this is the Chris Godwin injury that happened in Week 7 last year that required season-ending surgery, and he came back for the beginning of the season. So Fred Warner will likely be back next year to start the season, but he is going to be out the remainder of 2025. And it's when it comes down to it, there's just no way to sugarcoat this. The 49ers have lost their two best defensive players to catastrophic injuries. This is going to fundamentally change the expectations of this football team. John Lynch is going to have to reassess what they do to try to manufacture an ability to continue to win. 49ers, they still believe that they've got a shot to win the division, to get into the playoffs. But things got a lot more difficult without Fred Warner. There's just no way to say it. Now, I did wear my number 54 jersey. I wanted to honor Fred Warner and, you know, what he gives to this football team. He gives it all. And it's unfortunate that you have a contact injury like this that takes a guy out that's been really good about staying healthy. Fred Warner has been one of the most healthy 49ers in his tenure. In 8 years that he's played in San Francisco, just one game that he's missed. So this was a huge blow, and the 49ers responded right away when Fred went out. I love that from the defense. They got to stop right away. Tatum Bethune came in, you know, and really tried to help this football team. But you started to see some of the chinks in the armor when the game started kind of going on. You started getting some breakdowns in coverage. Some things happened. I want to get into all that as well. I want to talk about this game, but definitely the leading story had to be the health of Fred Warner, what's happening with Fred Warner, and unfortunately, the fact that he's going to be out the remainder of the year. And what do the 49ers do now? I think that is going to be a big conversation, is do they still push their chips to the middle and go out and make a trade for an edge rusher? Do they still do that? Or do they sit back and say, you know what? This is a year we don't know if we can win. We don't know if we're a championship team without Fred Warner. You know, maybe they are once they get Brock Purdy and George Kittle, you know, and their offensive weapons. Maybe the offense could drive this team and they could be good enough on defense. That's going to be a question that they're going to have to ask themselves. But right now is probably not the time to do it when you're feeling really down about what happened. You just can't replace Fred. There's just no way to replace a bona fide first ballot Hall of Fame All-Pro, the best linebacker in the NFL year in and year out. You just can't do it. So we're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about some more about the injury, you know, stuff for the 49ers. You know, Juwan Jennings gave an update on his status. He was having an argument with Kyle Shanahan on the sidelines at the end of the first half. We'll get into that a little bit as well. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, title sponsor of 49ers Cutback. So we know about Fred now, and this is unfortunate news. We thought it couldn't get any worse than when, you know, you heard that Nick Bosa was going to be out for the season, but now with Fred Warner out for the season, your front seven is in complete disarray. And the 49ers were struggling to stop Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this matchup. And it wasn't going to be an easy matchup anyways. Baker Mayfield is playing some of the best football that he's played in his entire career. He is a legitimate, right now, MVP candidate. And he did it without Mike Evans, without Bucky Irving, without Chris Godwin, and for half the game without Emeka Ibuka. We just got to tip our cap and say, you know what? He played pretty good. The 49ers had some defensive breakdowns in coverage, whether that was Marquis Siegel or others out there, because it happened to other guys as well. The 49ers decided to start Jair Brown now that Malik Mustafa was back. I thought that was an interesting development. When Matt Mayoko put that out there, I was completely shocked. We did not really see Jason Pinnock. We saw a rotation of Marquis Siegel, who by far is the best 49ers tackler, and it's not even close. Marquis Siegel is phenomenal at tackling. Then we saw Malik. He didn't really get too involved today. You could tell he was getting his legs back underneath him. It looked a little bit out of sorts compared to what we saw in the past, but to be expected. He hasn't played football in a while. And then I thought we saw status quo from Jair Brown. Inconsistencies tackling, some of the same stuff that he's always almost there to make the play. I think it's something that's continually concerning. So I don't know exactly why they decided to go with Jair Brown, but it's definitely something that was interesting in this football game to see, because it was a problem. And you look at the stats for Baker Mayfield. He went 17 of 23. He didn't really have to throw it a lot. Averaged 11.1 yards per reception. A lot of that, they had some explosives down the field today. Some opportunities for some of the receivers to make some plays. I mean, you had Cameron Johnson with a 34-yard reception. Sterling Shepard with a 36-yard reception. Cade Otton got a 23. Tez Johnson, the 45-yard explosive play downfield. Emeka Ibuka, a 17-yard play down the field. Rashad White, an 18. This is one of those things where explosive plays is not usually what the 49ers defense give up. The 49ers defense play a too high shell most of the time. They keep everything underneath them, and they don't give up these explosives. Now, the Tez Johnson touchdown wasn't a single high safety look, and Marquis Siegel was sitting flat-footed, and he got beat deep. 100%, that stuff happens. But we saw some other breakdowns as well. Tony Romo said that he thought that was because of Fred Warner. It could be because of Fred Warner, but we started seeing some of those cracks last week a little bit against the Rams. They put the 49ers in conflict, and some of the young players were having problems deciphering who they were supposed to cover and who they weren't. And some of it I thought was pretty elementary. This guy covers the widest man on the field. This guy covers the inside man. And I felt like they were having some problems with that in this game. And, give credit, to the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers, Grizzard. I thought he did a really good job. And I was saying, this the other day, I felt like he was a pretty good offensive coordinator. So they did a good job in this game. And it wasn't like it was all bad for the 49ers. The 49ers offense, they were able to produce. Mac Jones still put up 347 yards. And of course, that was one of the things that, I said that he was going to do for sure, that he was going to go over 250 yards in this game. He did. So I thought that, that was easy to do. When you looked at some of the stats that he's been able to produce, he's definitely been able, to get stuff done. Kendrick Bourne had another big game. Kendrick Bourne went for 142 yards on 5 catches. He had a 56-yard play. Christian McCaffrey came in just under 60 yards, which, kind of hurt me on one of my over-unders for my bet. I had him over 60 yards at plus 118. I did have Mac Jones over 250, so that was good. But the 49ers didn't win. They didn't cover. But, 49ers were at 50% in the red zone. Got that. They got their first rushing TD. I got that. And then Mikael Williams sack. I got that. So it didn't go terrible, but it was definitely hard for the 49ers. If you look at the stats, the 49ers played decently in this game. They were 0-2 on fourth down. That's not good. They did hold the Buccaneers to 3 of 8 on third down. That was really good. So you see some of the things they were able to do. I thought Mac Jones, he got hit, he got sacked, and you could tell the difference with a Mac Jones quarterback play inside the pocket compared to a Brock Purdy. What he's able to do to extend plays. I felt like some of the sacks were definitely on the offensive line. Some of the sacks were good looks from Todd Bowles. And then I thought that Mac Jones could be attributed a couple of these too for not getting rid of the football. So I thought that there was a lot of people that could kind of share, the blame when it comes to those 6 sacks. But 6 is a ton in a game. and that's not winning football. The 2 turnovers, the 2 interceptions, that's not winning football. One of those, both of them actually turn into really bad plays for the Niners. The first one, right, it's probably not Mac Jones's fault. Kendrick Bourne stops his route. I'm not sure it was the best throw to make anyways, because of the cornerback driving on it. But, he made the play on the ball. It was Kendrick Bourne stopped, and Mac Jones was expecting him to be there. So that's on Kendrick Bourne, but that produced the first touchdown opportunity for the Buccaneers, which they got. The next interception, another one that, he shouldn't have thrown. He had Jake Tunges for the first down at the sticks. He tried to throw it to Juwan Jennings, and it didn't work out. And, those were pivotal. And that was 49ers down 8, right? Opportunity to go down, get a touchdown, and tie this game with a 2-point conversion. And they were on the verge. They just weren't able to quite get it done. And Juwan Jennings says he's playing with 5 broken ribs and 2 low ankle sprains. So, he's gritting it out. Maybe that's why him and Kyle Shanahan were having some words on the sideline. If you didn't hear, Cam Inman and others were reporting that at the end of the first half, that Juwan Jennings was yelling at Kyle Shanahan on the sidelines, that Kyle Shanahan was putting his play sheet up to his mouth, but he was yelling back. At one point, Mike Anderson, who is the security for Kyle Shanahan, had to get in between them. Eventually, Leonard Hankerson, the receivers coach, was pushing Juwan Jennings away. So it was pretty verbal. I'm guessing it's because they're competitors and Juwan Jennings hadn't been targeted and he wants to get the football. But that is something that happened. Trent Williams eventually got involved and talked to Juwan Jennings and everything calmed down. But I don't know where this goes from here. But it was definitely not the best look for Juwan Jennings. It was shortly after that he had a really bad penalty, right, on the swing pass to Christian McCaffrey, which I think ended the momentum of that drive, going out and absolutely hitting the corner the way he did and hitting him early. He knows the rules. Later on, there's a 4th down quarterback sneak. He doesn't get involved. Every other player, all other 10 are involved in trying to get Mac Jones the first down, and he stood there. That's not the Juwan Jennings that we know. That's not the Juwan Jennings that we've seen. So I don't know exactly what's going on there, but there was definitely an opportunity, for Juwan Jennings to just, button up and do what he always does and play, and he wasn't doing that. So I don't know what happened. I can't speak to the full, dynamic of the conversation or how it began or what happened, but there was definitely some friction between those two guys. But the 49ers won the time of possession in this game. They won in a lot of key categories. They did a pretty good job. Now, the problem is they let the Buccaneers go 2 of 2 in the red zone. That's never good. And so you see some of the things that didn't go their way. And, one of them would have to be, not sacking Baker Mayfield when they had him dead to rights. Bryce Huff had him, and, Travis Gibson had him. And then they let him scramble and run away and get that first down. That was backbreaking. It was very similar to what happened last year, right, with Nick Bosa allowing Baker Mayfield to kind of get that pass off. Baker just does this. That was one of the concerns coming into this game is Baker Mayfield's ability to create off schedule, and he was able to do it again. He's just a very tough guy to deal with. And I thought that he continued to show that in this game. And it was tough. It was tough on the 49ers to go ahead, and get it done. But, the 49ers next week have a opportunity for George Kittle to come back. There's an opportunity for Brock Purdy to come back when the 49ers play the Atlanta Falcons. We'll be monitoring that this week. I don't think it's a thing to say, oh, well, Mac Jones is a bad quarterback or anything like that. I think he had a tough game when it came to one of the interceptions, maybe holding on the football a little bit. But, that was one of the key things I said this week when it came to offense was I was concerned about Mac Jones versus the blitz of Todd Bowles. And I thought that Todd Bowles did a really good job, confusing him in this game. We talked about interior offensive line against Vita Vea. That was a little bit of a problem. And so, those types of things kind of snuck up on the 49ers in this one, and they struggled a little bit. But, you look at the 49ers schedule, and it's not like this season's over, right? They've still got opportunities. They've still got a chance to go ahead and push. It's not going to be easy. It got a lot tougher without Fred Warner. I mean, you just can't sugarcoat this. It got a lot more difficult, but getting some of your key offensive weapons back, maybe, just maybe, you can start going in there and be more offensive driven, score more points, and then the defense can kind of hold people to around 20 to 25 points, or 20 to 22 points, not 25, I mean 20 to 22 points, like around there. But I mean, it's going to make the season a lot more difficult. That's for sure. Will John Lynch go after somebody, and still try to provide pass rush? Can Tatum Bethune become a player that can step in for Fred Warner? He did lead the team in tackles. Tatum Bethune had 10 tackles, 5 of them solo. So he definitely stepped up and made some plays. And so that's a good sign, but you're just not replacing Fred. And part of it's because Fred can cover. He makes things happen. He creates turnovers. He's a playmaker. And they need some guys to step up and become playmakers. Because right now, that's one of the big struggles is finding guys that were playmakers. Now, if you're going to bet with FanDuel, and there was a lot of good bets on the 49ers. I talked about the fact that, the bet on, Mac Jones over 250 yards, that really worked. And there's still games coming up, and you can bet on the Monday Night Football game that's coming up tomorrow. Right now, the Washington Commanders are favored at 5.5. The money line for that is, for the Washington Commanders at minus 270, and the over-unders at 49.5. They think this is going to be an absolute shootout between the Chicago Bears and the Washington Commanders, and you can bet on it using FanDuel. So I think the thing that's going to happen this week is the 49ers are going to try to figure out how to get this defense on the right track and in the right position to be able to handle the loss of Fred Warner. And it's not about replacing Fred Warner. It's about trying to figure out life without Fred Warner. You figured out life without Nick Bosa. You knew that what it was going to consist of. You were going to have to add somebody. I don't know if you can go out and get somebody. So do you have a belief in Tatum Bethune that he can play Mike? I think that Tatum Bethune can play Mike well enough as a tackler, as a run stopper. But now your defense changes from what you ask of your linebackers, because the 49ers always had 2 legit cover linebackers on the field at all times with Fred Warner and D. Winters. And now when you go to your nickel packages, you go to third down, you don't have that. So do the 49ers decide to do something interesting? Does Nick Martin now become a guy that you have available? What's that going to mean for him? We saw a lot of Luke Gifford today. We know that he played a lot. Will Curtis Robinson get an opportunity? Because I don't know how Tatum Bethune's going to play in coverage. And that's something that we're going to have to kind of look at during the week, is what the 49ers plan on doing, because it's not going to get any easier. The Atlanta Falcons have a lot of talent. They got Bijan Robinson to run the football. They've got some really good receivers. They got Michael Penix Jr. So it's going to be interesting for the 49ers to try to figure out what to do in life without Fred Warner. And it's tough. It's really tough because you don't know how you overcome these injuries. And you always say next man up. It's a great tagline, and it works in time, in some moments, right? Replacing some guys. There's no next man up when you're replacing Fred Warner. There is nobody on your team. There's not 2 or 3 guys on your team that you can manufacture what he does, because of his versatility and his ability to not just impact one side of the defense like a defensive lineman, but impact an entire defense, from where he puts everybody to how he's able to cover, to some of the deep drops he's able to take, the blitzing ability. It's just going to make things entirely difficult for the 49ers. And I think that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan really do need to evaluate how much they're willing to put into the season. Now, you don't write it off, right? Because we've seen guys come out of nowhere. There was a time that Fred Warner was a guy no one was expecting to be that guy, right? And then he stepped up and became a star. So with injuries happen, it always allows somebody to step up and potentially have an opportunity to grow into stardom. But it's hard to see right now. That is for sure. It's hard to see how the 49ers are a championship contender without Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. I think it's still a possibility that they could play well enough to win the division if the offense comes in and really is able to move the ball. The emergence of bringing George Kittle back in, getting Brock Purdy back, eventually getting Brandon Ayuk. I think all those things would be pivotal to maybe scoring more points, and maybe you could outduel some of the teams that you're going to go against. I think Robert Saleh is still a great defensive coordinator, and he will try to find a way, and it's all about limiting points. So, maybe you could find a way to win the division. Maybe you could find a way into the playoffs. But I think they're going to have to take a hard evaluation on whether they believe they're a Super Bowl contender. I think coming out of the Rams game, I think they were a Super Bowl contender. They were potentially a trade away for a edge rusher from being one of the best teams in the NFL and having a shot to represent the 49ers at Levi Stadium in the Super Bowl. I think that's up in the air. I think that's all you can think right now. It's going to take some time to reevaluate and to kind of look at this. And unfortunately, most of the conversation now is not so much about this game, which was a good game. It was, but it's completely marred by the injury of Fred Warner. And it kind of just resets everyone into the conversation about where they go next. I think that, whether it's Mac Jones or Brock Purdy next week, the 49ers are going to have an opportunity to beat the Atlanta Falcons. I still think that's a winnable game, even without Fred Warner. Yes, I understand that's a big loss. It's gonna be down to how the players handle it mentally too. But you still have the weapons. You still have a chance to beat them. The Atlanta Falcons are a solid football team, but they're not a elite football team. I think you played an elite football team with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have been really good. So it's going to be an interesting one, and how they bounce back is going to be pivotal. If they can beat the Atlanta Falcons, they continue to roll, right? Next thing you know, they're 5-2, and right now that's what it's about. It's about consistently finding ways to win. So it'll be an interesting week, of course. Like always, we'll be putting forth all the content. Leave stuff in the comment section if you're wondering why this episode is not live. I tried to go live. It was having some mic problems when I was on StreamYard, so I went ahead and recorded this one. Sorry about that. I wish I could have stayed live. I was looking forward to interacting with everybody, and hopefully I'll be able to go live more this week and figure out what happened. If it was a problem on StreamYard's end, which I'm going to look into, or what it was, but I don't know for sure. But I wanted to get something out. I wanted to talk about the game a little bit, and of course the Fred Warner situation. We're going to talk about a lot more as well. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening to audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode was brought to you by FanDuel. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.